Welcome back to Debate Decoder, where we break down political commentary from the left and the right, exposing logical fallacies and showing what's really being argued. Last time we looked at Stephen Miller's press conference. Today, we're turning to Senator Bernie Sanders' speech following the murder of Charlie Kirk. As usual, I have included a link to the full speech in the description. Let's decode the arguments and the fallacies inside them.
I want to say a few words regarding the terrible murder yesterday of Charlie Kirk, someone who I strongly disagreed with on almost every issue, but who was clearly a very smart and effective communicator and organizer, and someone unafraid to get out into the world and engage the public. My condolences go out to his wife and his family.
Sanders begins by offering condolences to Charlie Kirk's family. Importantly, he acknowledges that while he disagreed with Kirk on almost every issue, Kirk was a, quote, smart and effective communicator, end quote. This is a rhetorical concession. Sanders shows respect for his opponent while holding his ground politically. It sets a civil and moral tone, demonstrating that disagreement is not the same as dehumanization.
A free and democratic society, which is what America is supposed to be about, depends upon the basic premise that people can speak out, organize, and take part in public life without fear, without worrying that they might be killed, injured, or humiliated for expressing their political views. In fact, that is the essence of what freedom is about and what democracy is about. You have a point of view? That's great. I have a point of view that is different than yours. That's great. Let's argue it out. We make our case to the American people at the local, state, and federal levels, and we hold free elections in which the people decide what they want. That's called freedom and democracy.
Sanders' central argument is straightforward. A democratic society only works if people can speak, organize, and participate without fear of being harmed. Violence undermines democracy because it silences debate. He uses contrast to make this vivid. You have a point of view. That's great. I have a point of view that is different. That's great. Let's argue it out. This contrast separates legitimate disagreement from illegitimate violence.
Freedom and democracy is not about political violence. It is not about assassinating public officials. It is not about trying to intimidate people who speak out on an issue. Political violence, in fact, is political cowardice. It means that you cannot convince people of the correctness of your ideas, and you have to impose them through force.
Sanders calls political violence cowardice, and he insists Americans across the spectrum must condemn it. Sanders largely avoids fallacies. There are no ad hominems, no straw men, no slippery slopes. The closest rhetorical shortcut is his appeal to tradition and authority. He invokes the Constitution and revered figures as proof of his argument. This is more about persuasion than logic, but it's not deceptive.
Every American, no matter what one's political point of view may be, must condemn all forms of political violence and all forms of intimidation. We must welcome and respect dissenting points of view. That's what our Constitution is about. That's what our Bill of Rights is about. That, in fact, is what freedom is about. The murder of Charlie Kirk is part of a disturbing rise in political violence that threatens to hollow out public life and make people afraid of participating. From the January 6, 2021 attack on the United States Capitol, to the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, to the attack on Paul Pelosi, to the attempted kidnapping of Michigan Governor Whitmer, to the murder of Minnesota's Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, and her husband, to the arson attack on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, to the shooting of United Health Executive Brian Thompson, and the shooting several years ago of Representative Steve Scalise, this chilling rise in violence has targeted public officials across the political spectrum. Sadly, this is not a new phenomenon. We all remember the assassinations of President Kennedy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Senator Robert F. Kennedy, John Lennon, Medgar Evers, and the attempted assassinations of President Ronald Reagan and Alabama Governor George Wallace. This is a difficult and contentious moment in American history. Democracy in our country and throughout the world is under attack. And there are a lot of reasons for that which need serious discussion. But bottom line, if we honestly believe in democracy, if we believe in freedom, all of us must be loud and clear. Political violence, regardless of ideology, is not the answer and must be condemned.
In this clip, Sanders employs repetition and parallelism. It's not about, appeals to shared values like freedom, democracy, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and he lists historical examples, from the assassinations of Kennedy and King to modern attacks on officials, to show this problem is both urgent and deeply rooted in American history. Sanders describes the rise in political violence from January 6th to modern incidents and insists it must be condemned across ideologies. The intended effect is to unify across political lines by condemning violence wherever it occurs. For supporters, it shows Sanders as principled and consistent. For critics, the emphasis on universal condemnation of violence leaves little ground to object without seeming to excuse violence themselves.
This is a difficult and contentious moment in American history. Democracy in our country and throughout the world is under attack. And there are a lot of reasons for that which need serious discussion. But bottom line, if we honestly believe in democracy, if we believe in freedom, all of us must be loud and clear. Political violence, regardless of ideology, is not the answer and must be condemned.
To summarize what we have seen in this speech: respect for an opponent despite deep disagreements, a clear line drawn between political debate and political violence, a speech that uses history, shared values, and rhetorical rhythm to reinforce the message. In Debate Decoder terms, Sanders' speech is an example of principled rhetoric, light on fallacies, strong on appeals to democratic ideals. And one more note. Recently, we analyzed a video by Charlie Kirk and pointed out some of the logical fallacies in his arguments and those of his guest. That kind of critique is never an attack on the person and certainly never an incitement to violence. Debate Decoder is about exposing weak arguments so we can think more clearly, never about dehumanizing people or wishing them harm. In just a few minutes, we spotted one major rhetorical shortcut: an appeal to tradition. Otherwise, Sanders kept the speech free of obvious fallacies, relying instead on appeals to shared values and historical examples. Whether you agree or disagree with the speaker, recognizing fallacies helps cut through the noise. If you found this breakdown helpful, subscribing is a great way to find your way back here.